The Trump response to the storm of bad news that's taken place over the past 24 hours, whether it's in reference to the New York Times report on the communication between the Trump campaign and Russian intelligence operatives, or it's the handling of the Mike Flynn situation and their attempts to distract from it and turn the focus on something else, has been frantic and internally inconsistent, contradictory, but from top to bottom, it's been stereotypically Trump. And so we're going to break down those responses right here. Now, I would love to play for you a lot of video about this, but he's been avoiding doing much commentary on TV, and we're going to explain a little bit why that is and how he's able to do that. But what we do have is what we always have, and that's tweets. And so here are tweets that he's sent out in regards to this. The first says, the real story here is why are there so many illegal leaks coming out of Washington? Will these leaks be happening as I deal on North Korea, etc.? And that makes sense because Donald Trump, as we all know, has always been against leaks. He doesn't want them to affect politics. The next one, the real scandal here is that classified information is illegally given out by intelligence like candy. Very un-American. Well, that's where you're wrong, because if there's anything that's American, it's candy. So there, again, it's not what we find out, it's that it was illegal. It's not okay to do the leaking, even if the leaked information is true, because it was a crime, consistent position of Donald Trump. Information is being illegally given to the failing New York Times and Washington Post by the intelligence community, NSA and FBI, just like Russia, which could be interpreted as a critical statement towards Russia, which makes this the most interesting tweet he's ever put out.
Yeah, but probably not what he
But
intended.
probably not what he meant. That's just what it looks like.
Just let's pause here for a second. Now, look, he's got the usual goofiness with they're heading at intelligence like candy. Who speaks like that? Okay,
Baby.
All right, baby, sad. But more importantly here, so he doesn't trust his own NSA and FBI.
Yeah.
I mean,
dangerous.
we've got a real problem here. So can the White House, the President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, work with his NSA and FBI? And if you're a Trump supporter, I get what you're thinking, which is, well, hey, man, some people are leaking against him from those groups, so that's at least half on them. I think that's actually a fair point. But also, can you imagine Obama saying, this goddamn NSA and FBI, they're handing out intelligence like it's candy. The NSA and FBI are so un-American. Okay, so these are unimaginable
He said they were like
statements.
Nazis a month ago. Why not?
That was the CIA.
Yeah.
He said about it. So these
That's
are
true.
unimaginable statements by any Democrat or Republican before, and it could potentially be a huge problem for the country if the Commander-in-Chief doesn't want to work with his own NSA and FBI. So that's part of it, but there's more.
So there's the attempt to turn it to don't worry about the information, just focus on the fact that leaking is going on. But he does have another tactic. He sent this tweet out. This Russian connection nonsense is merely an attempt to cover up the many mistakes made in Hillary Clinton's losing campaign. What? That reporter made Mike Flynn lie about his calls, and Mike Flynn lied about his calls to protect Hillary Clinton.
But I'm going to give him half credit on this one, too. Am I not the fairest man in America? Because the Democrats do use the Russia thing as an excuse far too often. Russia, we would have won, but Russia and Comey and the weather. Okay, so, but that doesn't mean the Russians didn't do it.
That is not true. Simply,
Yes.
yeah, I'm not responsible for what Neera Tanden does. She can be accidentally right. By the way, also, I forgot to mention this. So in the previous story, the FBI was investigating these contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia. And so Comey was involved in that, knew about it, didn't mention that during the election, oddly enough. And this is a guy who wanted to give all the information. That's why 11 days before the election, he released that letter. And then 3 days later revealed that they didn't have anything.
So now I'll give half credit to Comey. Look at me, the contrarian today.
Okay.
So Comey, you're right, John, and GQ has a good write-up about it, about how, wait a minute, so Comey knew that there's some emails on Weiner's computer that is likely to be nothing and makes a giant big deal about it. They also know that, oh my God, his Trump campaign is talking to the Russians, Russian intelligence officials, but they conveniently don't talk about that before the election. Ooh, that's terrible. But watch out for Comey, okay? Comey, I think I've deduced what Comey's thing is.
I don't know.
Yeah, nobody knows, right? Like, so he defies Bush and acts on principle, but then he puts a hatchet in Hillary Clinton, but he didn't prosecute her. And so is he then, the number 2 guy under Ashcroft. So is he deeply conservative Republican? And I've talked about that in the past. I think what it is he has hero complex. Like, I'm going to be the one brave guy who stands up to everyone. Which, by the way, that's not such a bad complex to have. If you want to be a hero, that's wonderful, right?
Yeah.
Generally. But if you're forcing it, like you'll do things like, I will heroically be nonpartisan by putting out this nonsense thing about Hillary Clinton. You see that? Even though I'm working under a Democratic administration, I am bold and a hero, and I will defy them anyway. But now he's working under Trump. That same hero complex can turn to,
maybe,
no, I will continue to investigate Donald Trump, and if I find out that he did anything wrong, you think Comey won't indict Trump?
Yeah.
I think if you think that, you're probably wrong.
Lest you believe that Trump isn't going to throw some fake news around, he says the fake news media is going crazy with their conspiracy theories and blind hatred. MSNBC and CNN are unwatchable. Fox and Friends is great. So that's cool.
He's got a funny way of showing that they're unwatchable because he keeps watching them.
He keeps watching them.
And then as soon as they say something, he tweets out in anger if he's and he calls Joe Scarborough fairly regularly.
Yeah.
So
also, we're not doing a full story about it, but just interesting, he's going back to this. He also tweeted, Crimea was taken by Russia during the Obama administration. Was Obama too soft on Russia? And what is interesting about that was he tweeted that, I believe, 3 minutes after they made that point on Fox and Friends. So once again, they say it, he repeats it. So he is PR for Fox and Friends at this point.
So I actually think these comments by him are the funniest when he says that media and intelligence officials have been, quote, very, very unfair to Mike Flynn. No, but wait a minute. The media didn't fire Mike Flynn. You fired Mike Flynn. So if anybody was unfair to him, wouldn't that be you? If the media was unfair to him, why did you fire him? Think about that for a second. All of you Donald Trump supporters who think he's so strong and tough. He says, oh my God, what they did to Flynn was outrageous, but I was so weak that I had to bend to them, even though it was so unfair. And I fired him anyway, because what? I'm a coward, I'm weak, I can't make my own decisions. And he continued to say that it was a really, quote, a really sad thing that he was treated so badly. By who? You fired him.
Well, which is worse? Okay, Trump fired him, true. He left D.C. in disgrace, doesn't have his job anymore. But the media was mean to him, so which is worse?
Now, so if you're saying that the media was mean to him by revealing calls he actually did make to the Russian ambassador, and hence forced you to fire him for doing things that were terribly wrong, so it's a mean thing to do to reveal the truth and to reveal, and what you would have rather that they be all kept secret and maybe Flynn's working for the Russians, but at least you don't know about it and I don't know about it, and that would be the fair way of handling this?
Yeah.
As usual with Donald Trump, that makes no sense at all. And he's trying to deflect criticism from himself to anyone he can. But it is not unfair to point out that someone might be an agent of the Russian government if they're the national security advisor and lied about it and now admits that he lied about it.
Yeah.
And it's not unfair to point out that you're the one who fired him. Corporate media is awesome.
Wrong.
Independent media is the way to go.
Believe me. Believe me.
Support independent media right now. Become a Young Turks member. tytnetwork.com/join.